Social media has gotten a very negative reputation over the years, and with the advent of things like the social dilemma, it has gotten even worse, which has prompted me to obviously look at my own social media consumption and kind of come up with a best use case to actually use social media. Because I've read things like digital minimalism that essentially say, don't use social media, just get a flip phone and just call people all day long. But I've also talked to several people that say that you should be on social media all the time because ultimately it connects us and it is a force for good. So then this is my journey on all the ways that I've used social media and what I think is the ultimate best way to use social media, because I think it does exist and I think this is it. So my journey starts a while back after reading Digital Minimalism. I've started kind of thinking about my social media usage, but I kept using it like normal, like kind of how everyone else uses it. But after I watched The Social Dilemma, which I know I'm a bit late to this particular boat, but I'm doing it anyways. After watching The Social Dilemma, I kind of started to really question my social media usage, to the point where I outright deleted everything off of my phone and I disabled all the accounts that I could and I just stopped going on there. But what I found was exactly what the friend of mine that said that social media is a force for good, it connects us. I found that I miss people, and I found that I really like the connection, especially with what's going on right now, which I don't know if we're allowed to now say on YouTube, but I'm not gonna say it. We all know what was going on in 2020. With that, I really missed the social aspect of social media. It also was a very convenient platform for me to actually talk to people. And so I went back to business as usual and kind of went back to just being on my phone whenever I wanted to, kind of scrolling through Instagram, scrolling through Facebook, just to kind of see what's up with people and to have that little bit of connection with my friends and kind of with the rest of the world. However, I definitely noticed a drop in my productivity because when I didn't have social media, I was obviously a lot more productive. However, I was a lot more anxious too. I would always have this urge to check my phone, And that leads me to what I think is the biggest problem with social media and with social media consumption. And that is that we're on it all the time. Now, you're probably saying, duh, obviously that's the problem. But let's actually analyze that and go one step deeper, one step kind of below the surface of why that's actually a problem, to see how we can solve it and how I think I have actually solved this problem. Now, why is being on social media all the time actually a bad thing? And that has a lot to do with your dopamine response pathway. Now, dopamine is a reward for doing something that is good, for doing something that is productive. Now, the problem is social media has basically engineered itself to be essentially productive without actually being productive. It triggers the same pathways as, say, solving a problem, but without actually solving a problem, or at least in most cases. And so it essentially just makes you less creative, because anytime you have a little bit of boredom, you would do this. You pull it out, you flip it open, you'd go on whatever social media you want, Instagram, you'd scroll down a little bit, you'd probably close it, put it back in your pocket, and the little dopamine hit is there and it's good, and you don't actually need to get it in some other way. And the other way you would get it is through, say, solving problem. It's through being productive. So it's this aversion essentially to boredom that is the problem with social media. It's this pacification behavior. It's essentially putting a pacifier in your mouth whenever you cry. And so if we can actually eliminate this pacification behavior, then I would argue we can actually eliminate like 90% of the actual problem of social media. Because If we eliminate pacification, then our brains are freed to actually solve the problems that we want to solve. Because the brain is essentially just that. The brain is essentially just a problem-solving machine, and it needs to solve problems, and it wants to solve problems. But if social media is there, it does not have the correct reward pathways to solve those problems, and therefore you're not moving ahead in your career, and you're not moving ahead in your life. And so now that we know what the problem is, how do we actually solve it without outright quitting social media? And that is to embrace boredom. And that is exactly what I did. I embraced the boredom that was offered to me that social media is so readily there to fix. Whenever I was standing in line, instead of checking my phone, I resisted the urge and I was just simply bored. I tried to be as bored as humanly possible. Now this sounds completely counterintuitive, but it worked for me so well. I gained back so much of my mental clarity because by being bored, your brain is now freed up to do all the other tasks that it needs to do. It can think in the big picture. It can solve that really big nagging problem that you have in your life a lot easier because instead of giving it that dopamine hit whenever it wants that dopamine hit, it actually needs to earn that reward. For me personally, I needed to delete Instagram off of my phone, but for you, you can make that call. Whatever social media app that you have on your phone at this time that you check the most, you might want to delete. Only because you want to break that cycle of whenever you're bored, you're triggered your reaction of pulling out your phone and just scrolling through it for 30 seconds, not even looking at it, but then putting it back in your pocket and just kind of being good until your next hit of dopamine is required. And by doing that, by unlinking that trigger of, oh no, I'm bored, to I'm gonna pull out my phone and mindlessly scroll for 2 seconds. By doing that, you're freeing up so much mental capacity. So I urge you, try to be bored. If you need to, delete that social media app and say only check it on your computer at night. But the key here is really this boredom aspect. And I know it sounds extremely boring to be bored, but trust me, after a while, you will actually start to learn to kind of adapt to it like I did. I am now able to stand in line or sit in front of a TV and not need to be on my phone. And that sounds like a very small step forward, but I think it's huge because I've now learned to eliminate the worst part of actually being on social media. If any of this is making sense to you guys, then please hit that like button. That would tell me that, yeah, I am making sense, and yes, I should be making a bit more of this content. And if you've made it this far, please consider hitting that subscribe button because there will be a lot more of this content coming your way in the very near future. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.